basically, Nadine believes that Boris Johnson was politically assassinated by what Mr. Johnson calls a gang of trolls who operate inside Number 10, correct?
Yeah, I've never heard Boris call them a gang of trolls. Maybe you have.
Well, I was standing next to you when he said it was at your book launch.
Yeah. Oh, did he?
Yeah.
There are a group of individuals who some are known very well. Dominic Cummings, and there's my book launch. Dominic Cummings, a guy people don't really know about, I think, until the book came out, who's called Dougie Smith, who's been at the centre of the Conservative Party and Downing Street for well over 20 years, possibly near to 30 years. Who is sat at Rishi's right-hand side, Rishi doesn't make a decision without first clearing it with this guy called Dougie Smith, who used to run the Fever sex parties and orgies and has a very unsavoury past and present, I would say, as a fixer of the dark arts. But his dark arts go way and beyond. That Alistair Campbell, who was the known figure in the Labour Party, actually the unknown figure was a guy called Paul Offenden, who's still there. The known figure was Alistair Campbell. He was working for Tony Blair, whereas the team around Boris in Number 10 under Dougie Smith and Dominic Cummings were actually very much working against Boris Johnson. And the book is about this team of people. There's a guy I've had to call Dr. No because a team of barristers who put the book through a filter and the in-house lawyers at my publishers wouldn't let me name the individual whose past is even more, actually terrifying and unsavoury. And these are the people who are all roads lead back to Michael Gove. They've all been with Michael Gove for 20 odd years. So, and it was a revelation to me. I didn't even know about these people when I started writing this book. It was an absolute, and I've been in the party for 25 years and I didn't know they existed. And, your listeners might say, well, why does it matter? It's the Conservative Party. Why does it matter? And it matters because of democracy, and because the Conservative Party spends many more years in power than Labour does. And these people, they control not only the party, but the government, who is Prime Minister, who becomes an MP, who is allowed to be a minister and remain as a minister. And if they control the party and the government, they control you. And that is fundamentally undemocratic.
Okay.
And Boris...
I was going to say, Nadine, the issue surely that if one was trying to take issue with the plot, it's that Boris blew himself up because he allowed those parties to happen. He attended some of them. He then said there were no parties, which wasn't true. He backed his friend Owen Paterson, who was a wrong un. He backed his friend Chris Pincher, same ditto. He messed it up himself. He didn't need anyone to sabotage him.
Do you know what, Jack? I'll go backwards with those because, at my age, that's how my memory works. I can remember your last question first.
I only have one.
The Chris Pincher affair, what I find absolutely remarkable is one of the things I discovered when I was writing this book, which knocked me totally sideways. I had no idea, was the behaviour of MPs in Westminster. And I'm writing about Conservative MPs. I know a lot happens with Labour MPs too. But, in the book, I detail, a Conservative MP having sex with a prostitute on a billiard table while 4 of their MPs stood around and cheered. I talked about the video of a very well-known minister who's having, let's not go into the details, but, with somebody who certainly isn't his wife. I talk about the MP who uses his expenses to host his mistress in London and goes back to his wife on a Thursday night. Nobody mentions this. Nobody raises it. No, only one journalist has ever raised that issue with me. There is an MP who is an MP at the moment who is a serial rapist. No one's mentioned that. But an MP who I think he pinched another man's bottom in the Carlton Club, was the demise of Boris Johnson. I find that quite extraordinary. The contrast of that I find quite extraordinary. And to go back to you, when you said, Boris Johnson attended parties, I'm going to try and put this as succinctly as I can. Did parties take place in Number 10? Yes, they did. When did they take place? They took place on a Friday night. Who organised them? The press office. Did the press, people who were working in the press office, we got sworn affidavits from people who attended those parties and were fined multiple times, I believe, for those parties. Were journalists at some of those parties? Yes, they were. Did Boris Johnson attend them? No, he wasn't. On a Thursday night, he was out of 10 Downing Street. He was in Uxbridge's constituency. He spent half of his time up and down the motorway like a fiddler's elbow to the red wall seats.
Yeah, I saw a picture of him with a glass of wine at one.
So please let me explain that as you raise it. And I think people who followed, the Partygate, the great piece of inflammatory terminology that was used to describe what was going on, which the media just loved and ran with. Let me explain what that event was.
Okay.
You're talking about a very small number of events that were in Boris Johnson's diary. Please go into policy room, say thank you to X person who's been working here through COVID. Maybe someone even seconded in from externally. Toast them, say thank you, then go to 5 minutes later into the next room. That's what that was. The Met Police,
I see
who
Nick Freeman looking very doubtful about this.
I regard the Met Police as the highest authority who investigated what went on in Number 10, fined both Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak for being sat at Boris Johnson's desk when a group of people came into the room with a birthday cake. And I just leave it there because I'm not going to spend my life defending Partygate.
I can see we've got a lawyer here who's all right. We've got a lawyer here who's looking with that eagle eye. You do sometimes do. Nick, are you smelling a rat here or not?
Well, obviously you don't like the quality of our politicians. I would have thought the politicians have been like this since time immemorial. This is politics, unfortunately, and this is the way they behave. That doesn't necessarily, I think, preclude them from doing a good job. As far as Boris is concerned, my understanding is that he actually was used to win the election, which he did, and the plan was to get rid of him as soon as he'd done that. So he was, if you like, superfluous, literally from day one. He'd done his job. That was it.
Okay, we're going to ask if he should come back. Let's pause, because I know Nadine will have lots to say on that. And